So good to see everybody on this somewhat sunny day, I think. At least where I'm at, it is somewhat sunny. My name again is Peng, he, him, his, with the Men and Masculine Folks Network, coming to you live every other Thursday here with some of my good siblings here at the kitchen table, as we like to call it, talking about how do we practice healthy masculinity in our current lives, and how do we do it with the issues that are constantly arising, or we are being bombarded with in our own lives, the complexity and the nuances in that, and how to think through that so we can actually practice and be healthy for ourselves and for our community and for our families as well too. This is our 42nd, 41st, thank you, Sean. 41st show, so thanks so much for all the support over the last 2 years or so, a year and a half, and continuing to watch us, continuing to participate. We love for those who continue to be with us live here. We always want to engage with you and hear more about what you're sharing with us. Hopefully we will be moving to a different platform here soon, where then we will be able to actually see your chats, and all of us will actually see it. And so it's not so much Sean who does the monitoring of it at the moment, so that we can actually incorporate a lot more of your comments into our conversation much more quicker. But definitely always welcome the chats and the comments and the chimes in and the questions. And there's so much more to talk about yet today, but I want to also make sure the folks here get to introduce themselves first before we go on.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, I suppose. My name is Sean. He, him, his are my pronouns. I am in Duluth, Minnesota, where it's sunny and beautiful and feels like spring might be here. It is May after all, so hopefully.
Good morning, everyone. Felix Martinez, pronouns he, him, and his. Reporting from Eagan, Minnesota. Here the sun is out, recovering from a cold, flu, sinus infection, feeling a little bit better, and super happy to be back with you guys. So super happy to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much, especially you, Felix, because you've been through something over the last couple of days and still here and fighting with us, and appreciating you being able to show up as well too. I know it takes so much when we get sickness or we get ill. I was sharing earlier on with both of you that the last 2 days I was feeling that. I think it's like the stuffy nose now on my end or whatnot. So, but we're still here. We're still here. We're going to have the conversations because we know there's so much actually happening this month. We weighed the leaked document. What do we as men and masculine folks do? How do we practice doing that? What does it mean? Particularly around the conversation on reproductive health, sexual reproductive health, and what does that mean for men as well too, and how is that talked about, and then it being Asian American Heritage Month as well too, and then today being the kickoff of Missing Murder Indigenous Women's Month, right, Sean? And so there's just tons of things happening, and then we know like on Sunday is Mother's Day as well too, so we want to make sure that we touch on a little bit of each of those things, or maybe one of those things will be pulling our hearts and our minds and our energy, and we will really conversate on those. But really just wanting to name all of those things, because even if we don't have those kinds of conversations, as always, this is a platform for you all to carry those conversations into your own homes and into your own lives, with your buddies, the friends that you have in your own congregations, in your own neighborhoods, when you invite your friends over for a barbecue or whatnot this summer, this spring, is that these could be conversations potentially that you could potentially be having in terms of how do we as men and masculine folks practice being healthy in all of these things, right? As they show up, and how do we give honor and homage, quote unquote, to these experiences, especially to that of women and girls and queer folks, because that is our place, our starting place, and then we understand that when their lives are better, the lives of men and boys will also be better in community as well too. And so that's been a focal value of ours, is to believe that and to understand that as well too, is that that is the place that we start from, is the litmus test, who would say it, is that when their lives, like collectively, is better, then our lives will be really well, are really good as well too, you know. Yeah, so there's just so much. I know that for me, I don't know where the two of you are thinking, but I just feel like so unsettled and uncalm in this moment because of the amount of things that is actually happening, and particularly around Roe v. Wade. For me, is that has been quite something that I've been thinking about the last 2 or 3 days here. I was just watching this Trevor Noah clip on the Daily Show on YouTube, and he was talking about like how in this country, especially in different states now, because it's going to be, if that's the direction, if that is the direction that it is going in, based on this leaked document of like this is the verdict of the Supreme Court, then states will be left to decide about abortion, right? And there's different states who have different laws pertaining to it. And he was talking about how part of this, the history of this country, part of the history of this country is to actually do prohibit abortion. And yet, so it still has it in its book, right? And then that's where we're going to, but it has never like restricted the reproductive health of men and masculine folks in any way, right? And that has always found a way. He was saying, my point is, he was saying how it's always about restricting about like women's reproductive health, but it was always not about ever restricting men's, right? Because he was talking about how there's so much erectile dysfunction commercials and pills and things like that for men to actually get so that they can be sexually robust and sexually be able to sexually perform, I should say, and have the stamina to do so, right? And it all ties obviously into the issue that we've always talked about, is around masculinity and manhood and our own idea and definitions of it. We have to be clear around that, I think. And if we are not, society, and we have built a narrative, a really dominant narrative, to say what men are supposed to be. And so when we experience those kinds of issues in our own lives, then we will find ways to actually resolve it. But I don't know. That's just been some of what I was thinking about, is like, it's really the issue of reproductive health. It is also the issue of that we just came off of Sexual Violence Awareness Month in April. And some of these laws could care less about incest, could care less about rape. It's like, you know, he was talking about Trevor was talking about how God mandated this, and this must have happened, right? Like that, the rape must have happened. So therefore you have this pregnancy now. So therefore this child must be born right into this world. The question then becomes like, who cares for this child afterwards, right? And so we have so many laws on the book as well around child abuse and child neglect, and and we know that so many children who get placed into foster care and into adoption experience abuse and violence in their lives, right? Either prior to entering foster care and adoption, or while they're in foster care and adoption, right? That doesn't mean that it's everybody, but we do know that happens, right? And that we do know that a majority of them in some way have experienced sexual violence as well too, while they're in foster care or in adoption. So it's like, it's a ripple effect that we don't actually think about in society. And then who falls through the cracks is the kids who have disabilities, the kids who have mental health issues, mental wellness issues, because of things, you know, birth quote unquote defects that might be related to the rape that happened, to the traumatic experience that happened, to the traumas and the violence that their moms have been carrying with them, and then now they passed on to the child, right? So it's like we just, I think it's like it's so complex and it's so nuanced that it's just not this issue about choice or life, and that we boiled it down to just choice or life, and it's like it's just not that easy. It's just not that easy. It's the same as the mask question. Are you for or against masks? You for or against vaccine? And it's like it's not like I wish life was that easy where it's just yes and no. If life was just yes and no, I think yeah, things would be, we would all be robots for sure. And then life would be very simple for many of us. But life is just not that easy. And I think we cannot, on issues such as these, cannot just be thinking about it in like these very simple ways only, right?
Yeah, I actually, your comments kind of, yeah, my thoughts around that. We're thinking about this binary that has been set up where it's like you have to choose whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. Um, and for me, I grew up in a home that was very much pro-life, and my family is very, very pro-life. And so this has always been a really challenging conversation, and even topic for me to think about, like as an individual, especially after transitioning to, and now, with my masculine identity, I think, gosh, should I just shut my mouth and not say anything, because this is not an issue that I personally, have to deal with. And yet, um, I just think about like silence is violence. And so me not saying something because it's uncomfortable, um, is continuing to perpetuate harm for these folks. And so I think a lot of what I've been seeing in terms of, my people and responses like on Facebook and social media and those things, um, have really touched on that, what you said there, paying about like all of the nuances that are within this issue alone, that ripple upwards, right? As kids grow up, and like, are we funding their education? Are we funding all of these things, if we're pro-life? And, there's just so many different ways, that this issue comes up in people's lives, whether it's like a medical need, like, do we have to choose between this pregnant person and their unborn child? Like there's so many gray areas, and gray areas are really, really hard for us to talk about, and people don't want to talk about those because it's like, how do you, there's not one answer. There's not one, this fits all answer to abortion in my mind. And I also think about the people who are not cisgender women, who also have needs for reproductive justice, needs for reproductive health care. And so, really expanding that conversation to include all of the people who actually have a uterus and have the ability to get pregnant. And so those are just some of my kind of initial thoughts, but I mean, just really wanting to name like my discomfort with this issue. And at the same time, it's still a huge issue that affects millions of people, so I'll pause there.
Yeah, thank you guys. What's our role is the first thing that comes to my mind. What's my role as a father of two daughters? How you could be pro-life and pro healthcare for all, Obviously, I think everything, listening to you guys, it just make me think and make me, realize that as a man, we were born with this privilege and not allowing to listen to the women, it made me be scared even of opening my mouth of saying anything, So how I could be an ally, how I can support, how I can create awareness, just to be sure that, we start providing those resources and tools, because when we try to, when there's some people trying to ban abortion, at the same time we have people in Texas with the No Say Gay bill, so we're what way we're going, as communities. Obviously, there's a lot of men in power trying to control, our communities, and it's frustrating, maybe not to have the words to be a more efficient ally, and how, as a community, how we can work together in order to create awareness and to stand up against these individuals that are causing so much harm. Me having 2 daughters, understanding how violence work in our communities. How, as a father, I can empower my daughters when they're going out at night. When in the reality, in my mind, I'm like, just be careful out there. There's bad people out there, and without saying that, without taking away that, you have the power to change communities also. So how we can empower women when inside of us men, we know that there's a lot of harm out there. So it's frustrating, it's frustrating, and through, education, through conversation like this is when we need to start looking for those resources and be more active in our communities. I think as a community members, we need to be active. Like Sean said, being silent makes us part of the problem, and sometimes being scared of opening our mouth, because sometimes we're scared of causing more harm just because maybe we don't have, the tools, or we don't know what to say, or we don't know how to be efficient. So I think we need to support those organizations, working out there, doing the work already, supporting women, and being sure that their voices are listen, and also these people that have been working for years and years, and people just ignore them, or they don't pay attention to them, or they don't support them. So yeah, it's a lot of going on, even listen to the case of Amber and Johnny Depp, of domestic violence, it's heavy, to turn off the TV and listen to everything going on, and everybody has something to say, and I don't think we're making the right step to be sure this violence doesn't continue. Even there's a lot of good people out there. I don't know, as a community, we haven't find that tool or those ways to work together to, get those people out of, of power. And voting is probably the first way to create change, but we still see division even in our own parties. So yeah, it's frustrating. And obviously that's what I'm showing, what I'm saying, but confusion. But I see some light at the end of the tunnel, and we're taking those baby steps to make that difference. But at the same time, seeing the news, what's going on, it just makes me sad. So yeah.
I totally support what you're sharing, Felix. I think that you're right in terms of like the question that we ask ourselves in moments like this as men and masculine folks is, what should I do? What could I do? And to not rush into quickly solve the problem, right? Because that's what we're raised and socialized to do, is we're taught to like quickly go and solve the problem or move on to the next thing in our lives, or quickly deal with it. And I think in moments like this, with such issues, it's really important to listen deeply to the voices and experiences of women and girls, queer folks, that Sean was talking about as well too, and really think about the larger issue, be informed, learn about it, be educated, grow your awareness, grow your understanding, go and seek out that understanding and that know-how. Don't just go with the flow. I think things happen, like things like this come about, or I was just thinking about how even the war in Russia, with Russia and Ukraine at this moment, or that invasion there. It's like, how did that happen? How did we get to that place? And it isn't like everybody agreed to it. It's, when we think about it, it's actually a small group. To your point, Felix, is that it's often a small group of elite people, quote unquote, meaning that they have a lot of power. They are put into the positions. They've garnered trust. They've garnered support to be there. Who then decided that this is what we're going to do. And when we're not informed, or we're not looking, we're not paying attention, or if we're not, and we're saying, hey, that's politics, let's stay out of it. Hey, I don't like politicians, I hate them. This is what the result of it is, right? So there are moments in our lives, I think, to what you're also sharing as men and masculine folks, is that we have to pick a side. There are moments in our lives where we do have to pick a side, and you can't just be saying, I'm just going to stay neutral. I'm just going to stay in the middle. And when I stay in the middle and I stay neutral and I don't say anything, that's in fact also supporting it, right? The famous quote that I think people always quote is from that one during the Holocaust, and I think somebody, I forgot, and so apologize. I can look it up quickly, but I know I'll mispronounce their name. And that person had wrote, I didn't speak up when they came for who and who. I didn't speak up when they came for such and such. And then finally got to a place where they were like, and when they came for me, there was nobody left to speak up for me. Right. And it's about not taking sides. It's also about not speaking up. It's also about not being informed, because it was like too afraid to speak up. And like in war, I think many times people don't know what war is going on. I remember clearly the conversation I had a couple of years ago with some of the Hmong folks that were living in Vietnam, and they were like, during the Vietnam War, they were clueless. They knew that there was a war going on, but they didn't know whose side they were going to fight on. The government was like, go and fight this war, and then they went and fought it. And then they found out at the end that they were actually killing their own people. And then they were like, what? We thought we were killing bad people, right? But then when they heard the people that they were killing were speaking Hmong too, they were like, we didn't know we were killing Hmong people, right? Because they would have never chose that. But being that they were left out, they were left uninformed, and they were just forced to do something. If they had the information that we do, or if they had the free will to be able to actually learn and take the opportunities to learn that kind of information, and learn and that awareness and seek that understanding, I think they would have picked a side. And so I think it's important that we in our moments be decisive in our life. We have to be decisive. We cannot be like, oh, let me wait over here a little bit and see what happens. And I think of the most micro level thing that I can think about that, Felix, is when we hesitate around suicide, that's when people commit suicide, because we're still like, maybe they won't do it. Maybe it's sort of fake, right? And then when that happens, then we're like, oh my God, why did that happen? Or around domestic violence homicides. And he's like threatening her every day. And we're like, oh, he might not really kill her. And then boom, he kills her. And then we're like, oh my God, we didn't think he was going to do that. He didn't seem like that, right? But he made the threats every single day. But we hesitate because we're like, we didn't think it was going to be real, right? And so it's this hesitation point of like not saying anything or not doing anything, right? And if you don't, like, go. I think the thing is to go and listen, to go and seek information, to go and get understanding, and do it in a way that it doesn't trample on other people's experiences. Do it in a way where you're not asking women and girls to talk to you and teach you about reproductive health and reproductive rights for women and girls, but do your own education on that and seek support from them, seek support from other men and masculine folks in your life. Be able to actually think about, like, what does it mean for me to actually support women and girls and their leadership and lift them up in this moment, and really allow them to actually be the vocal voices, and then understand when you as a masculine and a man person need to be out in front and put your body on the line as well for them. Those are the things that I think we have to all think about, right, in this moment. So there's so much learning and so much that we should actually be taking action on now as well, to be doing within our own personal life, right? So the action isn't always just outward facing or publicly only in terms of public actions, you know. I mean, you all have choices in that, but you also have a very, very personal choice for yourself in terms of your own growth as a person and as an individual. And that is, I think, where I'm talking about is, what are you going to do in this moment in your life when you look back, and can you say, I'm actually okay that I made that decision, right?
Dang. that's that's some good stuff. I mean, even for me to think about too, because I think, yeah, there's just so much I don't know about the issue, because it's felt uncomfortable, because I've had that pull and push thing, like between my family and, you know, my chosen family, and how those groups are, you know, separated by this issue. But one of the things that really keeps coming to my mind through all of this is like, you know, how vocal, how, you know, present like men are in the conversation. I saw a picture of, you know, like a Fox News Roe v. Wade panel that was like men talking about this issue. And I just think, where's the accountability for the men who are getting people pregnant? Where's the accountability for them? What are we asking men to do? And it just seems like it's crickets on that level. Like, we actually want to be able to tell women or pregnant people, like, you need to keep this baby, but like, we're not going after that person who helped create that baby, you know? And so like that, it just seems so hypocritical to me, the ways in which men want to control women's bodies. And yet, I mean, I recently learned that vasectomies are reversible. So why is that not something that we have considered? Every young boy gets a vasectomy until they are ready to you know, parent a child. And so I just, yeah, that is really frustrating. And as a masculine person, saying that that's really frustrating feels kind of silly, because like, it doesn't actually, you know, impact me directly, but like, just to imagine all of the people who have fought for this, who fought for Roe v. Wade back in the day, who are now like, you know, all of us did all of this work. And the anger and the frustration and grief that I think our women and femme folks are feeling in this moment is just massive. I mean, it's hard not to feel that. And so, you know, I was just thinking, like, I haven't even checked in with my wife to be like, how are you doing with all of this? Like, this is big. And so that was just another thing I was thinking about. Like, we as masculine people can and should be checking in with our folks who are like just being slammed with this news, and it's impacting them so deeply. So, you know, even something as simple as just checking in and being like, hey, do you want to talk about this? Is there anything I can do to support you in this moment, whether it's buying you lunch or showing up at this vigil, or, you know, whatever it is.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Listening to you guys is just, I'm super confused. I want to also, to the people that are listening to us, if they feel triggered with anything of what we're saying, they need support and maybe help, please look for it. I think these topics are not easy to talk. Yeah, when we think about, you know, rape, incest, and in places like Texas now is, you know, in abortion is illegal, and someone who could that rape could sue a person who's trying to, you know, terminate a pregnancy. It really doesn't make any sense, you know. Especially if you cannot, you know, look for an abortion after the 6th week. I think that's what in some of those states are looking before probably people realize that they're expecting someone expecting a baby is a little bit unfair. And I've been listening, and reading and seeing people say, okay, so can I insure my baby, after the 6 weeks? So if I lose a baby, I can claim it. So, there's a lot of things that when people are starting to realize, what's behind all this stuff, it's like, I don't think even the people that are trying to ban abortion, they don't even know what they're getting into, and it show you the responsibility of those people out there that they have an agenda. Obviously, they have an agenda behind all this. It's not about women's bodies. They have an agenda that they don't care how many lives they destroyed. They have a purpose, and that's the purpose that we need to fight, because it's gonna put in risk of women, of life out there. So it's scary, like I mentioned before, the living the education in the youth with don't say gay bill, don't talking about gender. It shows you that there's something out there, and the people that are in power, I'm happy to say that they're not good people. They're not good people. They're using religion to hide their agenda. They're scaring people with religion. If you don't do this, you're going to hell. If you're going to hell, you're gonna burn there forever. So they scare you. You utilize their religion just to tell you, or you're good or you're bad. And it's scary the way we're going. It's really scary, and we need to start in our own homes. I think that's one of those things that I'm Catholic, and for me, religion is a way to when I'm stressed, when I'm depressed, when I'm looking for an answer, I like to pray. I don't go to church every Sunday. And I respect people that don't. But people really close to me, and I don't like to call out my daughters, but for example, my daughters told me, you know what, Dad, I don't believe in God. And when they told me that was like a stab in my heart. Like, what? What do you mean you don't believe in God? After, me taking me to church, talking about, I'm sorry, the importance of, of religion and faith in our lives. But at the same time, when I start, going through, her responses, and it makes you doubt also about, about religion. So yeah, I don't know. And I think we're getting in a different topic now when we talk about religion, but it shows you how people use, for these tools to manipulate, to control systems, to make you think if you're not pro-life, you're pro killing kids, you're mean, you're evil. So yeah, it's crazy. So I'm going everywhere. So I'll let time to continue the conversation. I apologize.
No, I think you're hitting on some points there, Felix. Because I think that what you're saying is that people don't live single issue lives. Like, people don't live single issue lives. And I think that you're so right, because I was listening to what you were talking about and sharing about like this pro-life, pro-choice thing. I'm like, we need to quit with that pro-life, pro-choice thing. I mean, it's simple, it's catchy, but it doesn't mean anything to the people that we've connected with, to the stories that we've heard over the years, and the work that we've been doing, right? Or at least I've been doing, I should say, on violence against women and girls and queer folks. If we are like for killing, we wouldn't be working to end violence towards women and girls and queer folks. We'd be like, what the hell? Kill them all, right? Already. Right? It is not just about killing babies and fetuses, and we understand infanticide. Female infanticide is tied to gender-based violence. Female infanticide, female genital mutilation, female infanticide, female murder, woman murder, is tied to gender-based violence, which is tied to the fact that we know and understand that when you live in a society that dictates that men are in control and men are the ones who are in power and who make decisions, patriarchy. We don't like to say that word too much in the society, right? But it still exists very much, you know, in very subtle ways, but we think it doesn't exist, but it does. Let's just let it be known that patriarchy still exists because women still are killed at a higher rate than men. And queer folks are not seen as persons, and that's patriarchy. So I think that just because, you know, I am for, you know, the reproductive health of everybody, you know, equitably, I'm for that. That doesn't mean that I am for the killing of babies. We have to think about which babies actually get killed and which babies don't. In our work, we know that in patriarchal societies, mostly baby girls get killed. Baby girl fetuses get killed, mostly. Right? And I think we don't think about those things, right? And then which babies get adopted more. In patriarchal societies, more baby boys get adopted more than baby girls. Right? Who falls through the cracks? It's the babies that look healthy and that look okay, like what I was talking about earlier. Right? And so there's like all these nuances that I think this like pro-life, pro-choice conversation doesn't get at, or the simplicity of simplifying just to that doesn't get to. Because if you're just saying you're pro-life, then, you know, join the bandwagon and end the violence that's actually happening to women and girls and queer folks. Like the ending of violence should be very simple for all of us to agree on them. And that the violence of the killing and the murder, the domestic homicides and the infant homicides that we're seeing, or the children homicides that we're seeing, that's not done yet. And then so maybe people may feel now overwhelmed and be like, we're not talking about all those things, and how are we going to end all those things? What we're saying is that, and what I'm saying, I should say, is that these things are all connected. Because people don't live single issue lives. People don't live silo lives and be like, I'm just going to go to work only. And when I'm at work, let me just contain myself to work only. No, we all know that everybody goes to work. You can contain yourself to work, but you'll get phone calls. You will go on break. You still want to check in with your family. That's bringing family to work. You calling in your family, or your family calling in to check in on you. That's you bringing family to work. You talking about family at work with your coworkers. That's you bringing family to work, right? And so like these things, I think that we have to be more, dynamic, maybe is the word, or more like nuance in our conversations, and like be more like look at our issues in much more critical ways, right? And in much more intentional ways, and being able to actually see and understand it a little bit more thoroughly, like just being able to see it very black and white and being able to see it very one squared way only actually doesn't help anybody in any way, especially to your point, Sean, about reproductive health for trans and queer and gender non-conforming folks, and what does it really mean for those folks? Because they're so invisible in all of this as well too. And I think that, to me, it's like, it's not that I'm either or this or that. It's like, I understand that all these issues are actually connected. All these experiences are actually connected. And I understand that people don't live single issue lives, as I've been saying all along here. And that we have to actually think about, you make one decision over here, it's going to be a ripple effect and it impacts all these other decisions. And so how do we help people think through these things, right? And how do we help society and our communities? And how do we as men and masculine folks, and how do I do that with the men in my lives, help them think through these and have these kinds of conversations. To Felix's point about like, I'm like confused and like just thinking through all these things. It is exactly that we need to think through all these things as men and masculine folks. We need to be looking at all these issues carefully and thoughtfully and intentionally. That one choice, creates good, lets you down one path, and then you have other choices that you will now make because of the choice that you make there, right? And it could either widen your choices or limit your choices. One choice allows for things to open up, for you to make more choices, or limits the ways in which you actually make choices and what choices you can actually make, right? That's the choice making in life that we have to think about. It isn't just about choosing life only. Yeah, I understand just choosing life doesn't mean anything, or being pro-choice is just that only. There's like many. I also know that to that point, and to what Sean was sharing about earlier, is that I know that there's many spaces and places and organizations, and that we support people being good fathers and good caregivers, and masculine people being good parents, right? And we know that they want to be good parents, and we know that they want to be good caregivers, right? And we know that that's the passion. When I teach domestic violence groups, that's where men get hooked, is when we talk about fatherhood. And then they start to realize, oh, my kids pick up on my behaviors. They see it. I shouldn't be using my kids in my room to entangle my ex-partner or my ex-wife in the relationship. Like, my relationship with my kids should be very separate from that relationship, right? And so it's like, so I want to acknowledge that, and I want to lift that part up too, is that we want fathers to be good fathers, and we know that there are ways for people to be good fathers, and we know that there are good fathers out there, and so if we're talking about this loving couple, and the argument is like, it's her choice, her body, and she can decide what she wants to do, but like that pairing or that couple will have to talk through what that means, right, for that person, for that masculine male identified person, because they want to be a father. What does that mean for them, right? And if they were to be the one that was raising that child alone for themselves, what does that mean, right? And how do they care for their partner who doesn't want the child in that time, right? And how do they support, because they're not the one that's caring? So it's like these things that we have to think through, and so it's not so simple about just this or that, but it's like, how do we think through all these things? And I don't think that there's one law that can actually resolve it all, or there cannot be multiple laws that will solve all of these things, because it's so. But people's lives are not, I think, are not so black and white that they can be written into laws. Like, people's behaviors, it could be dictated by it, but I don't think it could be written into laws, into trying to say, hey, let's move in these ways. And I know that policy shapes how people move. I understand that completely. And so it's a whole host of things that is coming to my mind that I'm just thinking out about at this moment, thinking out loud and sharing and saying, hey, people don't live single issue lives.
Yeah, that's always taking us back to where's our role. I mean, I think we need to put more people, good people, in positions where they can help and support us, and make those decisions. As a Latino, I want to see more people, more Latinos, and the government involved, so they can, just because they understand where we go every single day as Latinos, the language barriers, even if you're undocumented, etc. But be more human and be more understandable. This is a country built by immigrants, and as human beings, we need to let our hearts or values lead us to what we want to see in the future. We need to create communities of love, compassion, and safety. And just by listening to you, Peng, is just a lot of things start clicking in my head. Like yes, yes, yes. And we need to, like you said, just continue these conversations and do it at home, with our daughters, with our sons, and also as men, and understand our privileges and how we can be better allies. And it's really not that hard. It's really not that hard. We know that we cause harm. So how I can start making those steps to be sure that we can leave, a newer generation with better opportunities than the ones that we had. So they're more successful. So people are not looked by their gender. They're not looked by the color of the skin. So everybody's equal. And like I said, it's not that hard. Probably me, being a Latino, obviously I have a different perspective. But at the same time, me being white, I have some privilege that some other dark-skinned Latinos don't have. So what things I can do is, and yeah, I think that's why I see so important to have these conversations with my daughters. And having both now, I just picked up my oldest daughter from college last week, and having both now and being able to again have dinner together, sitting all four of us, and having conversation, it feels good. And I can see sometimes like some other individuals that don't have that privilege just because they work and maybe don't have that privilege or have that little time maybe of sitting all together and having a conversation, or maybe because they never had it with their parents, because maybe their parents they were so busy working that they didn't have the time to teach their sons and daughters the importance of having these type of conversations. Maybe because it doesn't affect us, maybe because I'm a man, maybe I don't need to be involved in that. No, we need to all be involved in that, because one way or another, we all connected. Whatever happened to you could affect me and affect others. So I think things happen for a reason, and being bombarded with all this stuff going on, like things say war, all these cases, abortion right now, don't say gay bill. These are time to step up and do something. It's not that hard. So yeah.
Yeah, Felix, you kind of touched on something I was thinking about around, like, we know patriarchy is real. It's like built into the fabric of our society. And that gives us on this call, and men and masculine folks all over, privilege. And I was thinking about the difference between the word privilege and the word power. And I think that there's an important distinction there, because there's, it's like there's privilege for me to move through the world and things are easy. But like, I also have power that I'm regularly not actually stepping into, where I could be doing that way more. And, juggling that, like, how do I, wield my masculine power that I just have? How do I use that for good, right? While also being, accountable. Felix just popped that in the chat. Yep, accountable to the women and the people with uteruses who like need to be the ones who are telling me, or not telling me, that's not right, because it's like I don't want to put more pressure on those folks to like, now you have to teach us and like show us how to show up. Like, that's not it. But you know, really like working with and in connection with those folks, having these conversations, not only with the men and masculine folks, but then like checking in with our women folks and our femme folks and queer folks to be like, where do you need me? Do you need me to show up at this event an hour early to set up chairs? Do you need me to get up and talk at this event and use the status that I have in the community to speak about this issue? Like, what does it look like? And I think there's so many different ways that we can really lean in. We can choose to connect with our community. And, you know, ultimately, I think it's like we have to remember that bigger purpose. I think, Felix, you mentioned it. Like, we're here to build safe communities, to like prevent, eradicate violence against women and girls and femme folks and queer and trans folks. And like, that's the goal, right? So how do we like take time to think about like, where's my role in that, and who's around me, and how are we moving together and pushing safety and inclusion and health forward for our communities.
Yeah, I think it's so much, and then obviously in our we can't discuss everything, but we know that we continue to have these conversations with one another. So my thing would be, I'd encourage all of you who are listening or who are listening now or later or whatever the case may be, is continue these conversations. Not only continue these conversations, but really think about the choices that you're going to make, that you're going to have to make. Think about like where they lead, what choices they lead to, what are the next set of choices that are possible or not possible. Once I make that choice, what does it do? And be able to really think. I think a value of ours has always been in the network about community, about building community, about to be healthy is to be in practice in community and to be connected with others in community. And that's just so like quote unquote nature to human beings, is to have that social bonding and that social connection, right? And that's community, whether it is your community of family, your neighborhood, your congregation, whatever a system or way or shape your community is living in, however you define that. It is also important to continue these conversations there. And for myself and others who are men, masculine identified, is really to ask the question, what should I do and what can I do in this moment? And I think we've offered a lot here in this moment, really, to be thinking about these things because the reproductive health and the sexual reproductive health and treatment and care and nurturance of women and girls is really on the line, right? And for queer folks is on the line as well too. And that means that when those things go, eventually men's and masculine folks' reproductive health will also go to the wayside. You know, I understand that because my reproductive and sexual health doesn't exist in a silo by itself. It's connected to those pieces of other people's well-being, right? So I think that that's where I'm left at, is that there's so much yet that we probably didn't cover or get to. There's so much more that we haven't probably looked at or thought through. And that I'm hopeful that we can continue these dialogues and that we can also take small steps and small actions to actually practice living healthy in our own lives as men and masculine folks, you know.
Felix, did you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I think schools can open those spaces, or maybe to organizations, to bring some of these conversations, to schools. I know schools sometimes they very careful with organizations that they open the door to, to bring, resources because I understand they also wants to be equal, but sexual education is something very important because I'm gonna prevent of maybe sexual transmission diseases and have a better understanding of what's a healthy relationship. So we need to be careful. But through education, I think we can solve a lot of the problems that we're fighting right now. Right now. So super grateful. I think this is super interesting conversation. Something that I hope, like Penn said, people take that conversation to their own kitchen table conversations, and being open and not be afraid of speaking up. Let's take a stand. Let's make a difference. Let's support our communities, and yeah, let's make a difference. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Felix, and thanks, Peng. I have really appreciated this conversation, and I was just thinking as we're wrapping up, it's like this space feels so important, and having spaces like this that are like they're safe places. They're not comfortable. Rarely are they comfortable, but they are safe, to have these conversations, to like say, I'm confused. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer or all of the answers are. And so I just wanted to lift that up, that I'm feeling really grateful for both of you and for all of the folks who are connected, who are in our communities, who are continuing these conversations, and who are really thinking about how we can show up, especially as masculine identifying people. These issues continue to pop up every day. It seems like there's a new really difficult thing that we're all trying to deal with and understand. And so keep coming to these conversations, keep having them in your families and in your friendships and all of those, and we will continue to host these conversations. So thank you again for joining us live or watching this after the fact for what is our 41st live kitchen table conversation put on through the Men and Masculine Folks Network. We want to thank our funding partners as always. Thank you so much to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota for all of your unwavering support, as well as the Novo Foundation for just helping enable us to continue these conversations and growing together as a masculine community who is wanting to become healthy and to heal and to show up in safe, kind ways for our folks. So our next conversation will be on Thursday, May 19th at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on our Facebook page. So make sure you click the like button, follow us, turn on notifications so you see when we go live. You can also find all of our previous conversations on our YouTube channel. And until we meet again, we hope that you take good care of yourselves and your loved ones and neighbors, and talk about it, have these conversations. All right, we'll see y'all next time.